Albert, thank you very much for joining me. I'm very excited to get your thoughts on the questions that we're asking here today. But first of all, if you could just introduce yourself for the audience.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for giving me the chance, Danny. Yeah, my name is Albert Torres. I am currently a site manager working in Gran Canaria, place of great weather, on a biogas project. Pretty cool. New challenges. Pretty excited about it. My background is in mechanical engineering. I did a master's focused more in energy and worked for some years in Siemens and Tesla as well. Also had some experience abroad in different power plants and so on. And now I'm doing biogas. So
Amazing. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it sounds like an interesting project. I know we've spoken about it off camera, so yeah,
mhm,
looking forward to hearing more about that.
yeah.
Perfect. So the questions that we've got from here today, I'd like to start with this one. What's your advice for young engineers that are starting their careers?
Mm. Yeah, I would say uh, basically it's in your hands at the end of the day from start to finish. And kind of one might be one of these very few lucky persons to get like the top mentor or win the mentor lottery, as I say sometimes. But that typically doesn't happen. So at the end, if you're not proactive and you take action in your hands, then the needle will not move where you want it to go, right? So I would say, besides that, I have a couple more things that I wish I had known from the very start. Maybe the first one is, kind of again, just taking ownership. So kind of, start with the end in mind, and I don't mean by that that you have a perfect layout. I want to be, I don't know, senior engineer after 1 year, and then I want to be in 3 years manager, then senior manager, and then executive. If you can do that, it's great. But it, with the end in mind, I mean like typically what you want, right? So or what you like, and you got to try to put yourself towards that. And one easy thing that one can do is just sitting down with your boss, right, and just saying, hey, I kind of like these topics. Like, for example, I like complex problems, or I like to work in teams, or lead something. So, what can we do to get me there? What should I learn? What should I focus on? Do you have some tasks for me? And just show that interest, and develop a plan with your boss, a plan which you should follow proactively. Don't expect that your boss will be like, if he does, great, but it's always in your hands, right? And I think the cool thing of that with that is that your boss will also remember, say, oh, this person told me that he or she likes that, so I'm going to give this task to them when this shows up. And also what really helps is that you're proactive in the sense, if you spot a challenge, you keep your eyes and ears open, you spot a challenge that it leans on that what you want, then you say to your boss, hey, I want to do that, I like that. So and then you start going solely towards that.
Yeah.
I would say a couple more. I learn also, and I encourage people as well in my teams to always ask why. Like, never be shy about that, because if you work in a large corporation and you start your career, you will see fairly quickly like there's so many processes and structures and so much checklists and things are done a certain way that you think it's the right way, and people do in auto mode. But people tend to forget there's a reason for that, and maybe that reason was long in the past and is not applicable anymore. And when you start asking why, you realize, maybe we can improve this. Maybe not needed. But at the very least, you will learn something, and perhaps you actually spot something that you can improve. So that really gives you benefit on learning quick as well. And maybe the key one, the last one, that I really wish I knew from the start, is to invest in leadership. I cannot overemphasize how important that is. And by leadership, I mean, it's to me influencing others to achieve a common goal that is for the benefit of all. And the benefit of all can be like achieving a financial goal for the company, which at the end makes the company stronger, which at the end the team will benefit from that, promotions and salary raises, or it's for the common goal,
Yeah.
And I just find sad, that as engineers, we don't get taught about leadership, which at the end, how to work better in teams with teams, right? And I mean, to me, this journey started with the book Stream Ownership. We talked about it briefly in the past, and it's a book that I recommend to everybody I work with and I work for, because it's sort of like, as an engineer, we learn like how to solve complex equations and problems and use the scientific approach to things, right? And how to get to the root cause and improve, but like we don't make the step how to apply that approach to people, how you work with people, And so, like an engineer will be, say that you're an engineer working in a factory, right? And a pipe, may burst, right? So the engineer will not come and say straight like, oh, you know what, that was a steel. Yeah, I don't like the steel. It came from a bad place. It's a bad steel. We need to change like all the piping in the factory. That would be crazy, right? No, we don't do that. We say like, this happened. So what was the temperature at the time? What was the quality check done? Was it still used in the proper condition? You start asking questions and spot it, right? Yeah. And yet, at least I have seen very often, certain managers or even people just working in teams saying, oh, this didn't get done. Oh, for sure was that guy. Yeah, that person is really bad. Has a bad attitude. But wait a minute, maybe if you ask questions, you realize not the guy. Maybe you realize like, as a boss, you didn't explain properly the task at hand, or you didn't give the team everything they need to succeed, or they were afraid to tell you because you never listened to any suggestions and you wanted your way. So we don't break it down to find the root cause. We always go, or some people may tend to go the easy way. So just by learning those few principles, such as like taking ownership and keeping simple communications and message gets across, and some other essentials that very well put in that book, people can just really boost their careers, feel happy at work, and and succeed.
Yeah, so I think they were amazing points. So thank you very much for that. And I think the sort of the main message I got through that was that you sort of create your own luck. And I think it's
correct,
that proactiveness and almost that sort of, I think that future-proof attitude where, like you say, you're not just focusing on the here and now, but you're almost preparing yourself for that next move, as you say, with the end in mind. You're always got one thought on what's happening now and how to deal with a solution or a situation now, but
correct,
to also have a thought at the same time as to how do I want to develop and how can the way I deal with this situation now help me to get to where I want to develop to. And I think it's just having that sort of awareness, isn't it, almost, and remaining aware of the where you want to be, and using that as part of your approach to deal with situations.
Correctly. And I think also important is that, because there's a variety of approaches that people have to their careers, but also don't expect to have the full trajectory done first and then start working on it, because it's very hard to know, oh, I want to when I retire I want to be here. Okay, if you know it's great, but you can start, I like that, let's go that, and maybe it's 1-2 steps ahead, not 20, but 1-2, start there, and then you start adjusting. Always keep left on adjusting, and then that's what I recommend. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think the good thing about the the almost the incremental approach that you just mentioned there is it's that open-mindedness to be able to do that, rather than just being tunnel vision to one goal, being open-minded not only on your journey to get there, but also what that goal actually may end up looking like. Just helps that open-mindedness when it becomes a leader, or when you even outside of work, your own personal personality, and how you approach others. That open-mindedness and that almost ability to adapt to changes is probably going to benefit you more. So I would have thought.
Correct, very much correct. So yeah.
Good, perfect. So the next question I've got: what's worked for you personally when dealing with contractors on site?
Yeah, I find that relationships with contractors are very dynamic. I mean, there's no like a one approach, I would say. And I mean, this may sound simple, but what I always try to do is, treat them with respect and as part of the team. And I understand contractors. You can be in a position like you're the customer, the end user, and you hire a company to do a scope, or it could be that you are like the main contractor hired by the end user, and you yourself hire somebody else, right? So in either of those cases, you have the vision of what needs to be done, when needs to be done, what quality needs to be achieved. So you have the vision. You have you have a lot of ownership actually.
Yeah.
And that being said, one needs to keep in mind that, assuming that the contractor went through a qualification process, right, and they're really, technically good, safety and everything is in place. So you need to remember, there are people that also want to feel good at work, that they want to feel proud of what they're doing, right? So, and they also want to feel like they have synergies in their work environment, that people listen to them and appreciate them even, and just taking the approach of, okay, here's the contract, there's penalties, here's the timeline, you need to do this, get it done. That you don't get the most out of it, you just done. And maybe to elaborate on that, I can speak of my own, experience in the Tesla project. So we did the Gigafactory in Berlin, and it's a massive project. We had a lot of contractors. Some of the contractors, that was their first EV, electrical vehicle factory ever. Some of them, for some scopes, of course, not everything, but some scopes, right? It was maybe the biggest project they were in, right? So I took a proactive approach in the sense that, I will explain them. For example, we're working in the paint shop, right? So I would tell them, hey, we should keep like the cleanliness criteria and quality standards, because if we don't, and this goes to the car somehow, or to the system somehow, look at how the paint will look like. I show pictures, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's so important. It's not just a contract and then I will come with a penalty. I'm explaining them why, and they say, okay, got it. And then at the end, I don't have to waste time like, being a police officer, double checking, triple checking, sending emails, and watching every single step, which is a waste of time and resources, because they get it. Of course, I still check, obviously, but there's an understanding in them, and then they will try to do a good job, because they want to do a good job and they want their company to grow and get more. So it's pretty basic. And the next one is, I always remain proactive when it comes to timelines in general. So I know in 3 months I need to deliver that, so I start asking questions like, hey, what how's that coming up? What's your plan, to get to step 3? When are you planning to do step 1 or 2? And just asking, realizing, being proactive, not just waiting and sitting back and realizing 2 weeks before that we didn't make the deadline, because then I suffer much more, even with the penalties or whatever. You suffer much more. That's it. And maybe the third one that is a bit on the really flexible approach. There's also, it's like a normal relationship, so it's giving and taking. Sometimes maybe I, as a customer, forgot a scope, small one, and then if you have a good relationship, they will say, it's pretty small. The contractor will be, I'll take care of this. Don't worry about that. I'll do it. And it works the other way. Sometimes they might come with another material they didn't find, so they give me an alternative. Hey, can you check this one, see if it's good? I could say no, give me the contract, or I could say, you know what, I'll have a look, and then you give, right? So you develop some synergy, of course, up to a certain extent, and it's really flexible, because also at the end of the day, if you see that they don't have a good heart and they don't want you to succeed, you also need to take the clean cut, say, that's it, guys. But you always have to remain flexible, and try to develop a relationship, and this is how you get the most, I think.
Yeah. I think it's it's so powerful, isn't it, when everybody's working towards the same common vision, common goal.
Yes.
I think it's,
Yes.
as you say, it gives them a bit of purpose and meaning, whilst being on site. They may not be the main contributor, but their part feels just as important as everybody else's. And I think naturally, if you're a good person that intends to do well, you're gonna do the best of your ability, aren't you? And I think it's going to build a much stronger relationship, and hopefully then that there's somebody that you might see on site again in the future, and that'll be work and something that you've already put in place on the previous project, so that when they come and they know that you're managing it, it's one of them, isn't it, where they'll just perform from the start, and you're almost setting that precedent for future use, which is always good.
Correct. Develop the relationship even long term. Exactly. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, the next question. What is the most valuable lesson that you've learned about leadership, and how's that then shaped your approach to leading others?
Yeah, I would say like a few things. The first one is, can we talk a little bit on that on the first question, is that actually everybody leads, and it's everybody leads because at the end we're influencing people we work with or for to achieve this common goal for everybody. So we're in this position every single day. So that means that no matter if you're a formal manager or you're a individual contributor, an engineer, whatever, you're always in this position to try to look for support or move the needle towards where you want it, that is for the common goal. Now, if it's not for the common goal, then and it's for your personal gain, this is called manipulation, which is not the right thing. So tiny invest, and I suggest this book, Extreme Ownership, will really boost your career. I've also seen, and this is really important, that leadership must come from a place of good heart and care. And I really encourage, like, if you want to go towards manager role, that you ask yourself and you check your intention, like why do I want to be a manager, right? Well, why am I seeking this? If your answer is something like, oh, it sounds cool, or I want it because I want to get a better financial situation, or I want to get more power or whatever. So if that's where you're going, like really advise double check that, because it always comes from good heart and care. So you want to make something better. So you want to make the company better. You think you can make the team better. And why is that important? Because at the end of the day, no matter how smart you are, people will see through your intentions. So you can end up being a manager that says, "Oh, the team failed." Well, actually, it's not my responsibility. It was this guy. You got to take him out. So people will start seeing that very quickly. Things that you do, and they will not want to work with you ever again, no more. And you will fail at the end, and you'll be pretty frustrated yourself because your heart is not in the right place. And so maybe just one last thing about this. One should never confuse, this is what I say, leading with care and good heart with being soft leader or spoiling your team. It's not the same. When I say care, I mean you got to put your team through tough situations to develop their confidence and to see where they're failing or missing, so they can work on that as well, and that they find solutions by themselves, and that they grow in this environment, right? And caring also means, if you see somebody has a bad heart in your team and he's not supporting other people or just trying to play the system, you got to talk to them. And if you cannot make them understand, then you need to find another place for this person outside of the team or the organization. So that's caring. It's keeping your team strong. And I would say, like, this about the good heart. I can always work with somebody that has a good heart, that is a humble person and wants to improve. You can teach them, and they can improve. But if it's in a bad place and the heart's in the bad place, and so it applies to everything. Having good intentions. So this is maybe a couple of things I realized with time.
Yeah, again, a really great point, because I think as well, as a leader, often you're setting an example. You're somebody that people will maybe emulate, and your practices will be followed. So I think, like you say, if you come into that with the wrong intentions, you're almost breeding that culture within the team that you're going to have people that are then doing their work with the wrong intentions, and they may come for you at some point, and maybe throw you under the bus, and ultimately it just creates that culture of sort of selfishness, and Almost, it makes everybody's life more difficult, including your own as the leader, if you breed that culture. So I think going out with the right intentions obviously avoids that. Oh, well, should hopefully avoid that if you're working with the right people. And, I think you become more influential as well. I've found, I've obviously had leaders in the past that, when you trust them and you believe that they care about your development as much as the development of the team, you perform a lot better. You feel more comfortable, and it allows you to perform at your best. And I think, as a leader, that's a very powerful tool. It's something so simple, but it can unlock people's potential probably a lot more than anything else.
100%. And also, in this, because there's in the culture is always like, one may think leader is aggressive or he knows what he wants, right? But in the discussion that we're having, being aggressive or loud or whatever you want, it doesn't play any role to what we just said, not at all. So it's not needed, right? So it's what you said. It's actually making from the start the intentions, and your culture will emulate this intention in your approach. Yeah, very well. That's correct.
And I think another thing just on that I've noticed as well is that aggression often gets confused with passion. And I think it's important to try and separate the two, because I think sometimes, you can be overly passionate, and almost to some people it seems aggressive. But I think, that is something whereby that care in nature, if you show caring outside of that, they will believe that it is passionate, and that you're doing it for a reason. But if you don't have that caring element and you become passionate, they may see that as as you say, a form of aggression, which, is not a great situation to be.
Very well, because that's correct. Because people at the end, they always see the intention. It's in your face, so they can interpret. Yeah,
absolutely, brilliant. And the final question I've got for you then, Albert, is why should engineers consider working in smaller companies at some point during their career?
I would say, in small companies, you're closer to the product, so it means you will see how your decisions and how everything around the company is impacting the product, by making it less or more or more expensive, safer or not as safe. So you can see very, very quickly, how is that affecting, how does that affect the customer? So you learn a lot, and you learn how to prioritize certain things. If you start, and you always work in large corporations, because of their size, you're very far away from sometimes for the customer, from the product. So you may be doing things, but you really don't have a feeling for how much impact you're actually having at the end. So, and maybe, just to elaborate more on that from my experience. And again, I will mention some companies, but this is only my personal view. So I worked for some years for Siemens, and Siemens is it's a company full of highly professional people. They are really committed to quality, to delivering a safe product, and to creating like value for the customer at the end. And part of that culture is kind of zero mistakes, right? Which is, I think, correct, because some of the products can really put human life at risk. And I think the worst nightmare of, at least mine, is that I do something that causes a fatality or a severe injury.
Oh, yeah.
So this culture of zero mistake, it's 100% clear. However, if you're only working there, and you will have so many processes and structures and checklists and things and ways on how to do certain topics, that you may feel that it's a little bit slowing you down when you want to do something new or create something new, or in your general work, right? And this may happen because maybe your boss is not explaining you very well why we're doing these things, or you don't ask yourself why are we doing those things. So you start thinking that some things are not needed, but there's a reason for that, and maybe it was in the past that there was a mistake that happened, and we implemented this to make it better, but we tend to forget. Right? And we just do with the flow things, right? So when I go to, let's say, Tesla, right? So Tesla is a fast-paced environment, right? So many things are being done for the first time. It's a really flat structure, so you have a lot of autonomy to decide, to do things, to try. It's a culture that making mistakes is okay. Yeah, and it's not a small company, but it feels like a startup, which means that there are not so many processes as if you compare it to Siemens, right? Or structures or guidelines or yeah, in general structure for what you do. So we're working when I was working there, right? We're working fast. We're delivering great product, great service and everything. But sometimes mistake happens, right? And you analyze it, and it was like, okay, it was sort of human error. Okay, this one was okay. This condition was not checked. Something happened. Okay, so let's implement now a process. Let's implement now a guideline. So you start getting this structure to it. Now, if you work in a large company before, you have all this wealth of strategies and ways to do things, and you can implement. But because you're working now in a small company, you see directly the impact. Well, not a small, but kind of start a company close to the product, because in Tesla, everybody's close to the product at the end. You can see the impact. So you're like, okay, we need to do this to mitigate, but let's keep it simple, because at the end, the time will get longer to deliver because of all these additional checks. So at the end, I think when you work in small companies, it helps to keep it grounded, to prioritize where we need to implement process structures and checks. And of course, if you also did large companies, and you have a wealth of ideas on how to do certain things. So I think that is, in my case, this is two worlds that you can learn from both of them, I would say.
Yeah. No, it's a really interesting concept, because it almost sounds like you're saying that in a smaller company your creativity is less limited, but you also see your impact. So not only can you be more creative, but maybe it teaches you to be more responsible, because you get a direct direct visual on the impact of your creativity, and hopefully that finds a good balance then. And if you do move into a big company, you can be creative but responsible, which obviously they want that responsibility, but you'll know how to sort of drive your creativity in a responsible fashion. So hopefully that is adopted in a big company once you've learned that from maybe the smaller company.
Yeah,
great advice. Well, I really enjoyed that conversation. That was a lot of great points shared, and I'm sure everybody listening will definitely agree.
Yeah, I hope so. I would love that young engineers can get something out of this. At least I would have loved at least to get a head start when it comes to leadership and learning about that. So I hope that this helps people as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's massively appreciated. Thank you very much.